And this is what Mosby and his boys decided to do for the rest of turn six. um, as we can see, they have indeed used up their two hide cards, which are excellent cards. Splendid they are. And now we're still in turn six. Yeah, that's right. We've got two more turns left. And we've got notoriety is 7 point, as I like to put it, 7.5. Okay, so to get up to 9, then clearly we have to get 15 more performance points to achieve that. And we have 2 turns left to do it. Okay. Basically, but what happened was Mosby and his boys decided that they would strike up in this direction. And the nice thing about the hide card was this: we don't remember the exact locations, but well, let's see, it would be 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think we went as far as to here, and then blew the railroad there, and that caused all kinds of three units activated. So then. Let's see. Mosby had the initiative, so he moved away 1, 2, 3 down to this spot here at Purcellville, and all of them came after him as best they could, and I think 2 of them ended up in his space, and so then the hide card was played. They were already in his space, so that meant that's the end of that procedure with the hide card. What you do then is you take all the active Union units, you move them 1 space randomly, and you make them all inactive. So that meant that the units that were all up here came down here, which is handy because it's sort of middle of nowhere, really, you know, and they all went inactive, 1, 2, 3. So then that was the end of rounds because they were all inactive. So then on the when we went back to Mosby's operations, he then just, he and his boys, they just rolled around the Union. They went up to here, over to here, and look, nobody home. Okay, so then he came down to here. Of course, there's still a large Union force there. Doesn't get a reveal marker. Has an endless source of boys with the blue suits in there. But anyway, they blew the bridge, and very little came out of there. I think very little reaction. I can't remember, maybe a small force or something. And there was a little bit of, that's right, 2 units appeared. So we did that, and then we came down, let's see, what did we do? 2 units were activated. So we rode down here, but then the 2 units that were activated were able to, well, one made it to here, one made it on top of us. We've only got a strength of 2. They had a strength of 5, so that wasn't looking good. So again, Mosby played the hide card, and this unit then deactivated and moved randomly to here. This unit that was there deactivated and moved randomly to here. The reason he went this far, so far to the west, was to keep the units away from these units here, just in case something went wrong. And I suppose it couldn't have gone wrong because I had the hide card. But anyway, I wanted to separate them. I wanted to get them going this way and keep them away from them, because if you have them near other inactive units, and you've got, if you're in the process of doing rounds, every round you checked for Union activation, and let's say, imagine if had gone down here instead, and imagine if the rounds were still going on. If that had been active, each round you would have rolled for him, for example, because he's adjacent to him, to see if we could activate him to get him on side as well, you see. So best to sort of divide and conquer. Anyway, it was really cool the way the first part was, where he went up here, did what he did, they all became active, and then he ran down here. They followed him, but he played the hide card and left them searching for him, presumably. And then he went up here and did an end run around them and blew the bridge at, let's give it a name, Harper's Ferry. Rather important place, okay? Harper's Ferry. Right, there we go. So, that's what he did. So we scored a lot of points in turn 6, certainly. We still got 15 points to get in the last 2 turns, but, you know, that seems possible. Also, the fact that the notoriety is now 7, that one of the things that held Mosby back to an extent in this turn was the dreadful response that he got from his boys when he went a recruiting, and he only got 2 strength points. That's because I rolled a 1. But now that on the recruitment table, now that we've got notoriety of 7, here we go. If we roll a 1, even if we roll a 1, we're still going to get at least 3 strength points. And hopefully we've got a good chance of getting, look at that, 4, 4, 5, 5. I mean, that'd be nice to have a force like that. That's for sure. And then we could really go around a whooping and a hollering and kick some northern butt. Why not? So, yes, jolly good stuff. Still got 2 turns. I'll probably wrap it up for the evening now, I think. Still got 2 turns left. I am thoroughly enjoying the game. I'm thoroughly enjoying the AI system. I feel like it's not insulting my intelligence. I have no feeling that I'm just going through the motions. I feel that it's finely balanced because it's not like I'm massively behind, or it's not like I'm soaring far in advance of where I need to be. It's still a struggle to be able to do everything, to be able to get the points I need. And I also like my miniatures too. I like having the miniatures. I hasten to point out, these were not made. I didn't have these made for this game. That is just an element of a Confederate unit that would have been used in my war games in Fire and Fury, which is a very interesting set of rules. They're not my favorite. My favorite are volley and bayonet, as of course one might have seen on my other videos that I've done on Preston the Wargamer channel. Fire and Fury are smaller scale, in the smaller scale operations, as it were, than volley and bayonet. Volley and bayonet, you can easily do entire battles on a table because the scale is so much larger. And I do give some serious thought sometimes about using those forces to do some American Civil War volley and bayonet. It'd be nice to bring that to the table. As this is the place that I've done, this is the very table, of course, that I've done. Volley and bayonet 20mm scale Battle of Quatre Bras in 1815, for example. So could possibly have a Civil War battle come to the table at some point in the future. Who knows? And so I think, I think that draws a veil over turn 6, and we'll move on to turn 7. And I say, here's to it. Well, here we are. We just finished turn 7, and we're ready to start turn 8, which is the final turn of Mosby's Raiders. In turn 7, we had some very interesting developments. Just find my pointer here. Right. We had some very interesting developments. The Mosby's Confederacy was sort of rebuilt. All the devastated areas were removed by a event card. Which means that he had many more places to come onto the board, as it were, when he starts out his turn. We also had another Union sweep, so they arrived hereabouts and did a bit of devastation, like those boys like to do up there, and but. Mosby was based at White Plains, so they weren't going to come into contact with him. Okay, fine. And then also in the events, the Union wagon train started out from Harper's Ferry up there, and also some depots appeared. We had actually a depot appear there and a depot appear there. Okay. And then, of course, when the wagon train appears, things take a rather it's sort of dealt with immediately, because after you go through all the random event cards, then you immediately jump to rounds, foregoing Mosby's operations. You go straight into rounds, and the wagon train, I rolled, and the Union had the initiative, so that it moved first, and it moves one space once per round, as it were, making the shortest possible track down to Middletown down here. Okay, and of course, as it moves each one of those, Mosby is moving in rounds, so he can move 3 spaces unless he has special cards. So he started off here at White Plains, and he also got a lot of very nice cards. Had Mosby's Heroics card, which gives him a +2 on a combat die roll, although he also has to run a casualty check. So it's risky, but it can be very powerful. Anyway, the wagon train came down here, and then at any time, Mosby can just sort of move into the same space. It potentially has 2 Union combat units with it. You have to roll for activation to see when you enter its space to see if those Union guards are activated. And they weren't activated when he attacked the wagon train, which is sort of, I think it was there at White Post. And then, of course, when he entered the space, they weren't activated. And then the wagon train doesn't move when they're in the same space as him. So on his next go, he demolished the wagon train. And, of course, that will then fire off. It will fire. He waited until he was well away from the Union forces, well away from the Union lines. So down here. So there are no Union spaces around here, and there are no Union forces, so there was no one else to activate other than the 2 potential guard units, and he got lucky on that one again. They didn't activate. So now all this kerfuffle, of course, had put the Union awareness up to 5. So doing that right at the beginning of, more or less at the beginning of his turn, 7th turn, was a calculated risk, but anyway, it was worth 5 points, of course, for the wagon train, so that was good. Union awareness went up to 5, so what's next? Well, the thing is, because he had the heroics, and he also had a sort of Mosby escapes death or something like that card, then I figured, well, yeah, let's do some pretty gutsy moves here, see what we can do. And of course, the depots had arrived, so it was a case of, right, let's go and blow one of those up. So he just shot straight up here, basically, and went up there into, let's see what it's called, Tramelstown, okay, and let's see, walked into Tramelstown, and then it was a case of, let's see, are we going to do any activations? Nothing got active. No, there were activations, sorry, when he blew up the depot. And it's an interesting location, because this one here, of course, is not within the Union lines, but it's only actually connected to 2 spaces that are inside the Union lines, and both of them activated. And a strength of 3 here. We had a strength of 8 there. So, oh dear. Then we go to rounds, and we roll for initiative. Sorry, and the Union got the initiative. So both the Union units, of course, headed for, as you can imagine, headed for Mosby, and so you got combat. But even though it was 11 against 4, because he did have a good complement of men with him this time, given that he had his +2 for his Mosby's heroics, even though they had a -1 on him because of their odds, and they had a -1 on him because of the Union reaction chart, it was worth the risk. So we rolled it up, and we won the battle. So, of course, because we won the battle, they had to retreat, and they lost 1 strength point. So it was 3 points for winning the battle. It was fully 11 points for defeating an enemy of a strength of 11, and then a further 3 points for destroying 1 combat strength point. So what does that come to? That was 3 plus 11 is 14, plus another 3 was yeah, 17 points then for no, I did calculate. I know I calculated it correctly when I did. I think he got, he got 1 point for winning the battle, 11 points for forcing them to retreat, and then 3 points. That's right, 3 points for killing a strength point. Yes. So just a second. So he got a total of 15 performance points. And that took him up to the situation that he is in now, where his notoriety is at 10, and he's got 3 more performance points in hand there. So that means, of course, he can categorically, I don't know what the cards might do as we come into turn 8, but probably it's the case that they couldn't mess that up too badly. So it may be that on turn 8, Mosby simply decides to disband because he's already won, as it were. So we shall see. But yeah, so that was a big oomph there. And one of the things that drew to my attention was how significant the depots are. Of course, they show up when they show up. But if they do show up, if you can, go and get them. And then the other thing is, you don't know, of course, as you can see the depot marker, you don't know how much it's worth until you demolish it and then you flip it over and see how much it was worth. The one that was up there was worth, I think it was worth 6, wasn't it? Yeah, so pretty juicy target, okay? But the other thing was, look carefully at the battles, because if you can defeat a strong force, well, it's just got a lot of strength points in it, if you can cause that force to retreat, never mind killing strength points, but if you can just force them to retreat, then that's one heck of a lot of points you can get out of that sort of a thing. So if you've got enemies nearby that, might be worth 6 or 7 or 8 points, yes, of course, you give them the respect they deserve, but have a good look at it and see if you can attack them and defeat them, because if you can, you're going to get 6, 7 or 8 points, plus 1 for defeating them. So that's a lot of points. Okay. Anyway, so I'm sure I've made mistakes and so forth, but right now it looks like we're on to a certain win. So I'll certainly, if I'm going to play this again, I'll reread the rules. I'll also look at the optional rules, because I noticed that the optional rules had some rather fun things on the depots. For example, when you demolish the depot in the optional rules, you roll a die to see what else. You might pick up some food there, or you might have a premature explosion, which does something bad, that sort of thing. But it's nice to add on a bit of chrome, as it were, once you've got the basic rules down. Anyway, so yeah, still thoroughly enjoying it. Just got one more turn to play, and then we will have completed our first game of Mosby's Raiders, and I say, here's to it. And here we are at the beginning of turn 8, and Mosby's notoriety is at 10 with 3 additional performance points, so we can think of that as being sort of 10.3. What I've actually already done, it's not right at the beginning of the turn, I've already gone through all the phases at the beginning of the turn, except for adding these chaps over here, which are in the 8 slot, which should have been added to the container. But I didn't do that because I'm actually going to stop the game at this point, and that will save me a little bit of time packing up. It's turn 8. We've done the random events to see if they messed up Mosby's points at all, and they didn't. One thing that happened was the Union lines got extended down here, and I'll have to look at the rules on that some of the time, probably. But I've just dropped my pointer. Hang on a second. Yes, I mean, it doesn't do to drop one's pointer, but anyway, yes, because I thought it was an intriguing situation, because, of course, when the Union lines got extended very early in the game, which is up in this way, we can see here's the Union line, blue spaces we can see running along here, and that sort of general thing. Oh, I suppose they run from here, and there you go, sort of down this way, blah, blah, blah. Very good, very good. So they got sort of extended, those 4 extended forward. You roll on a table and it tells you where to put the markers, and As a time saver, note that if you roll a 4, for example, there's a little number 4 in there. It tells you where to put them, because otherwise it can be very difficult to. It takes some time to find the places on the map. But anyway, when we just roll the die and roll a 2, so as we can see here, we roll a 1 or a 2, these spaces here. Fine. So fully 7 of them got placed over there. But I thought the interesting thing is that they're not actually connected to the Union line. So if that space was sort of, I mean, I would definitely think that any one of those spaces would count as being inside the Union lines. Okay. But so these spaces here are sort of outside the Union lines. So, okay. Interesting. Anyway, but all that aside, yes, the thing is that he's so far ahead, I could play out the 8th turn, to see if I can get the performance points literally off the chart. But I'm not actually interested in doing that. He's got some very nice cards as well. And let's see, also got one of them was, what was it? One of them was to increase his strength by 1 when that card is played there. And actually, there are 2 of those. Yeah, so, it would be fun. But I've got a lot of games that I'm trying to get through here, and I think it's time and limited time in which to do it on a weekly basis. So I think we're going to pack this one up. So let's look back now on the game. Well, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, bought the game something like 40 years ago. Not quite 40 years, no, more like, 38. Probably bought it around the time it came out, when solitaire-by-design games were very, very thin on the ground. And just never got round to playing it. Always looked at the rule book, and it looked like it was just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of rather dense prose. And because it was so new and so unlike anything else I'd played, which would have been two-player or more games, mainly two-player games, I just kept reading the rules and putting it away. But helpfully, of course, a catalyst to get you started can be these marvelous YouTube videos that folks are making now. That if it's instructional, step by step, or if it just shows you the game being played, both of which are very, very useful to have. Then, of course, you've seen it played, so you get the general idea. So then, okay, off you go. And again, my approach, which I'm definitely going to stick to now, is wherever possible, I'm going to set up the game and start playing it. Not just pushing some pieces around, but actually start playing it. And if I make some goofs, then oh well. And of course, that depends on the game. Some games, in the very early part of your very first turn, you may need to know, rule number 25, which appears on page 30. Lord save us. But anyway, that could be the case. But hopefully with a bit of luck, in most cases, you would be using some of the simpler rules that appeared more at the beginning of the rule book, as it were. Yeah, it's possible. It might not be. Perfect case, of course, would be something like Squad Leader, where they deliberately had programmed instruction where, as you went through and played each scenario, more rules got added on in an entirely systematic way, which was absolutely brilliant. A wonderful way of doing things. Anyway, so yes, it was a lot of fun. Of course, the subject is warfare, and there is combat, and there are a lot of decisions to make. So it's not like, it's not really a war game. No, this is definitely a war game. But it's not a war game. It's not at all like most traditional war games where you would have, I would have an army and then the other side would have an army. So yes, the other side does have an army, but I've got Mosby and his boys. And, quick aside there, I've come across some different pronunciations of Mosby. Some folks saying Mosby. And all I've done is I watched several different YouTube lectures and presentations by historians and so forth and so on. And without seeing any discussion of his name, almost every one of them, as far as I could see, was pronouncing it Mosby. So I stuck with that. So I don't know which way is wrong or right. But anyway, yes. So the system was very clever. I suppose now some thoughts, perhaps some deep thoughts. Now time for a deep thought from Preston the Wargamer. Okay, so one of the things, of course, that this game shares with a game, I think there was also by Victory Games, I believe, wasn't it? It looks awfully similar, which was Ambush. I do apologize if I'm wrong. Is that by profession, I write software. I'm a programmer, a software developer and publisher. And one of the things that this game has, as did also Ambush, is they both have a great deal of, if I could put it this way, they both have a great deal of data in them in the form of the cards, okay, in this game. And I can't remember if there are cards in Ambush. I think I'll probably be looking at Ambush pretty soon. But anyway, Ambush, of course, has the book with all the paragraphs in it. So that adds a lot to the game. It doesn't add so much... well, it can add a lot to the game just mechanically, meaning that you turn over a card and you follow its instructions and so forth and so on. So, but of course, what tends not to happen, at least in the random event cards, it doesn't sort of say random event, Mosby +1 in combat. It will, of course, then have the background for that, which you can read as well. And of course, this does give it a very rich texture to it. Also, because there are so many cards, it means that on each turn, or at several points perhaps in each turn, there are lots of different things happening. And it certainly does make the game more interesting and more entertaining. So it's not just like where you're playing the AI and you roll for the AI to see, well, do they stand there and shoot? Do they hide? Do they move one hexagon? You know, do they move two hexagons? Do they move towards you? Do they move towards the objective? You know, just roll a die, look at a table. No, here we've got cards, each one of which has got an actual sort of story that goes with it. And that does draw you into the simulation more than just rolling a die to see if the enemy squad moves one hex to the west or one hex to the east, as it were. So yeah, that's if the game has a lot of data in it for a solo game, a solitaire game is what I'm talking about. It's one of the things that makes the solitaire experience interesting. Whereas if you're playing a two-player game, yes, you could have cards with lots of text on them as well, but it's that would be rarer. And most two-player games will make do with, or they'll be perfectly satisfied with, you've got lots of units, the enemy has got lots of units, there's a big map, there's a lot of rules, and I mean, isn't that enough? Go for it, okay? So yeah, it's nice if there is this backstory that's unfolding as you're playing the game. Same thing was true, of course, of the game I played immediately before this one, which was Cruel Necessity, the English Civil Wars. So there were all the event cards that were being turned over there all the time, and they had the backstory on them as well. The one thing with that was, unless you were a real student of the English Civil War, and I have an interest in it, but I'm certainly not a scholar, a lot of what was being discussed on those cards would have been very sort of dry and abstract history, that sort of thing. Whereas here we've got Mosby and his boys attend a wedding and dance with the ladies. And, you know, most of us can kind of get our heads around that. Anyway, just saying. So I suppose there's a role for both techniques, certainly. One moment. So yes, thoroughly enjoyed playing the game. The score that Mosby achieved was so high, again, being a programmer, would lead me to think I probably did something wrong. I haven't read on, for example, what people have written on Board Game Geek. I don't believe I've read about this game. Oh, it's a pushover. I always win. I always get the notoriety and points off the scale because it's so easy. Well, of course, I could have had a lot of luck playing the game. I could have had outrageous die rolls. I don't remember doing that, and I could have been awfully lucky with the random event and action deck, I suppose. But I think what may have happened is I may have been a little inaccurate in my implementation of some of the rules because it was the first time I played the game. So I may have made mistakes in the rules that favoured Mosby. I certainly couldn't put my finger on what that would be. I did have a big problem with the activation rules. That is to say, and until I realised, I've got these charts as well that I printed off. Okay, but of course there is a rather a good activation summary right here. Okay, because the thing that kept on tripping me up was that when the different things happened, what happened as a result of that activation wise is not the same. It's not like, oh, you kidnap someone and so everyone within a 300-mile radius is alerted to your presence and is going to come after you with a pack of hounds, that sort of thing. No, you kidnap something and something relatively small happens. But if you demolish something, then you're taking a much bigger risk because, as you can imagine, word gets out pretty fast. You start blowing up railroad bridges, and the same thing with combat and so forth. So it looks like that's a pretty good place to go for a good, complete summary of what to do with activation. Yeah, so anyway, the other thing that was good too, of course, as I mentioned before, is that once you've got all the pieces sorted out, which I do now, I'll put them away very meticulously, the game should be very quick to set up because you're gonna put your forces there, or actually, of course, it's the lady who did I can't remember her name, sorry, but the lady who did a very good summary on YouTube of Mosby's Raiders. American lady, and she pointed out, of course, you can, if you keep them in separate spots in your storage tray, you just leave them in there instead of putting them on there. It's not that big of a deal, I suppose, to put them up there, but leave them in the storage tray, and if you don't get that far, they just stay in the storage tray. Okay. But so as long as they're sorted out, now I suppose I'm going to have to sort them out now when I put them away to sort them back into their 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8 piles. But do that. So do the work sort of putting it away. And then when it comes to setting it up, it's not like you have to set up this number of pieces. You put Mosby on the map. What do? I think all you do is you put Mosby on the map. I'm not sure if you put anything else on the map at the beginning. You put the bridges on the map. That's right. You put the bridges on the map. You only put the railroad markers on when you blow up the railroads. Yeah. So you sure don't put much on the board when you set it up. No. As opposed to a complete difference, which would be a game like, as I keep mentioning, Normandy 44, for example. I'm not picking on that. It's a great game. But or a game like, I don't know, the Russian campaign or Anzio, something like that, where, it could easily take you over an hour to set up the game. Because there are a lot of pieces and they all have to be in exactly the right place. And you may also have supplemental orders of battle sheets that you sort of put beside the table, as it were. And you fill those up with all the counters that are going to come on later. And it might take an hour or two to set up the game, which is a column that I wish was in the database on Board Game Geek. I wish Board Game Geek had a column for setup time for a game, and also had a column for, let's see. Of course, this is generally speaking, but it could be useful. Number of pages that the standard rules constitute. So the standard rules before the optional rules, before the advanced rules, and before, if at all possible, before the examples. Of course, I mean, you can say, well, it's not that simple. What about the size of the page and the density of the text and all that sort of thing? But I mean, it's a start. How about that? Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I want to know. I mean, I'm a lot more attracted to a game at this stage in my life. I'm a lot more attracted to a game if it's like, well, it's 10 pages long for the standard rules. Okay, but if it's like, well, it's 30 pages long for the standard rules, I was like, I don't know. It had better be really, really, really good. And I think you get the general idea. Okay, well, pure pleasure as always. And that's it for Mosby's Raiders for now. I would certainly play the game again, absolutely. And I wonder what I'll be playing next. Well, I say, here's to it.